I've probably
Yeah.
known Tiger for, I don't know, 6 to 8 years. Don't know exactly when. I've been aware of him longer. Um, to me, and tell me if you know of anyone else, to me, he's the foremost executive recruiter in the ortho space, certainly the most tenured. Is that true?
There's people that have been around longer than I have. Drew DeAngelis,
Oh, I know
Brian
Drew.
Cole. Yeah, they've been around 25 years, a long time. Um, I'm an engineer, innovator that just said after the last acquisition, I'm not working for anybody anymore. That I'm done. And so all my friends said I would be a great recruiter because I've always helped people find jobs. I'm a people person, and so I started 7 years ago.
Oh, I
But
didn't
yeah,
realize it was that few.
I met Joe probably 6 years ago, and he encouraged me to start a podcast, which I'll always thank him for. We sort of had a meet and greet call, and Joe recorded it and sent me the audio recording. And he said, "You ought to just turn this into a podcast." And so I did. And I've done what has been 45 more episodes since then. But yeah, I always thank Joe for that. He showed me how easy it was to do.
What's the name of the podcast?
It's called Inside Orthopedics. It's mostly I interview startup CEOs mostly, and it's kind of it's a chronological thing. It's like, tell us how you built the startup. What were the problems? What were the issues? How did you get over them? It's chronological Q&A.
It's like
You're
you're
welcome
the
to
Guy
put any
Raz
links.
of orthopedics.
Tiger, you're
What's
welcome
that?
to put it.
You're
You're
the
welcome
Guy
to put.
Raz of orthopedics. You
Yeah.
don't know Guy Raz?
Yeah, Guy Raz. Yeah, how I built that. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wrote
Guy,
this
he's a
down.
great interviewer. Yeah.
Yes.
I was trying to say you're welcome to put any and all links in the chat for
Oh,
folks.
if I know how to do that, I will
On
try to
Zoom,
figure it out.
just there on the bottom, it's to the left of it's participants Q&A chat.
Okay.
Um, just a note, I have frankly no recollection of having advised Tiger to start a podcast. And the reason I bring that up is because what was just like a side comment from me had a real impact on someone else. And just kind of in the spirit of family, you don't know the impact you have on people just by having a conversation. Um, so if you're ever feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing, well, there are people benefiting from things that you did, and you may never know.
Right.
So that's
Exactly.
kind of a nice
Chat.
reminder.
I found it. Okay.
So Tiger is also a publisher. No, we talked about publishing this podcast, but if I'm not mistaken, you write for your blog every single day.
Every single day. Yeah, there's 3,600 articles now. It's a monster. Yeah, so I'm really three things. I'm a recruiter. I'm an advocate for orthopedic startups, and so I love orthopedic startups. I will do anything to help. People they call me all the time. Anything I can do to help. And then the third thing is I'm a publisher. So I have a podcast, a blog called Ortho Streams, and a newsletter. I just started. Joe's helping me. I had a lot of people ask me, why don't you create a community in orthopedics? It's a safe place where we can all talk about confidential stuff and help each other. And people were tired of LinkedIn, so I started it. It's called Bone Chat, and it's just getting started. And it's a subscription.
It's an
Um,
MDG premium model. He has the same thing, and we're just talking now about how to bring his family to life. And I said, if you take nothing out of our conversation other than this, you simply must have a weekly call.
Yeah,
Um,
you're totally right. I've had a lot of feedback already, Joe, that says people are really looking for that other interface. Yeah,
so when you sent out that note this week about we're going to start Thursdays, did a lot of people
I,
say hooray and write
yeah,
you?
they did.
Excited
They
about that?
did. They were
Great.
hungry. They were hungry for something. Yeah.
And you can see
Well,
we spent the first 10 minutes just kind of whatever, Susie, tell
yeah.
me about your clinical trial. Eddie, what's wrong with your bookshelf? Just that and Eddie smiles, but it's just that kind of touch that says, I know who you are, I care. Um, and I think you'll agree that in terms of marketing yourself now, it's just show me that you're a real person, you're genuine, you actually know who I am and care, and I'll be there. Because anyone can churn out a blog, even though decreasingly few do. Um, it's funny, I think about 2008 when was it eight? Seven, when I published my first website. Um, and I just started at cardiac science at the time. And I remember I started Joe Hage Online. That was my first site. And it was like 2 or 3 months after I had joined the company. And my boss called me into his office. He's like, what are you doing? Like, you just started here and now you're starting a blog? Like, are you trying to get another job? What are you doing? And I said, I'm learning how to do this. And I started publishing some articles about marketing. And when it came time to recommend a blog for cardiac science, they were like, I don't get it. Like, what? Why? Like, who would read this? And I said, you don't get it. I said, Google will read it. And when somebody's looking for something, we may just be the answer. Um,
Yeah.
so I still think that's true, although I think the energy around SEO and ranking, while important in many categories, I still think it's um, perhaps underappreciated in medical device.
Yeah.
Uh, Presents
Oh,
opportunity for people who sees it. So on that, in that vein, do you find, or do you ever have people do secret searches, or do you search yourself to see if what you've written show up when you Google various terms?
yeah. I just don't care, Joe. I just share so much stuff, that I don't have time, to I don't care. I don't care. There's no advertising, anything. I've never asked for any advertising.
Right.
Even the podcast is free, no ads.
Yep.
And my feedback is, so I just got a email today from a startup CEO that wants, he's asking me to hire some engineers for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I have no idea. I don't even know the company, you know.
Yep.
And so that's the magic of just
Oh, no, I love those stories. I remember.
putting everything out there. Yeah. Don't get
Okay.
me started on creating your own brand, because I'm a big fan of that. People don't do it enough. Everybody should have their own name on a website. Everybody should have their own YouTube channel, even if you only have one thing you put up. I'm a big fan of that, because now, I think today, man, you get me going now. But today, 10 years ago, who are you? Okay, I'm an employee of Baxter. Okay. And now it's, who are you? I'm Joe Hage. I'm an expert in this or that. Your brand is not your employer anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that travels with you too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think everybody should have their own brand, whatever it is. And
And
the universe is an amazing place. If you have an interest, the people that are interested in the same thing you're interested in will find you. If you're into like midget wrestling, you can find 1,000 people in the world that all they are interested in is midget wrestling. That's all they
I'm
want to do.
interested, I'm looking at your ortho streams and it's laid out very much like an Instagram page. Is that something that you designed, or is that in
It's
bed like an
No,
Instagram?
it's just, I just use a cheap theme. It's um, I'm not proud of the layout. They're
Nothing wrong with
you
it.
know,
In fact, I kind of
there's
like it.
yeah, there's 3,500 articles and they're chronological, and you could just scroll through, or you could. The best way is to use the search box. So if you just type in anything you're interested in, MDR, patents, you're going to find 100 articles. It's
Well, tell us about what you're seeing in ortho land these days.
yeah. So I actually made some notes. So I'm going to go through because I've written about this. I wrote about this a couple of months ago. Um, there's I'm going to go over 9 trends that are in orthopedics. I'm just going to go through it real fast, and then I'll
Sure.
just open it up if anybody wants to go deeper. I just live and breathe orthopedics, so that's all I know. The first trend is the big orthos have completely stopped innovating. They don't even care about innovation anymore. Um, their innovation is acquisitions. They just buy startups after the startups are successful. Um, Second one is there's
Hold
a
on. Don't you
yeah,
glossed
yeah.
over that quickly? So, are you basically saying that ortho R&D departments have been decimated?
No, they're still there, but they do mostly sustaining engineering, and they're risk avoidance departments, and so they have stage gates. You guys probably know what stage gates are.
Just in case
Um,
we don't, go ahead.
yeah, so they have a very disciplined system of taking an idea and then all the way to commercial launch. And they're called stage gates. Some companies have 5 or 6, but you get proof of concept and you check that box, and then you get a regulatory opinion and you check that box. And anyway, those those things, this takes years now because everybody is incentivized to avoid risk at all costs. And so J&J, Smith and Nephew, Zimmer, they're not allowed to do anything. And I talk to these people every week. They're not allowed to take any risk. And it's because they're publicly traded companies, and they live and die on earnings every 90 days, and they have legacy products in the field that they can't disrupt. And so they're literally not allowed to innovate.
Hmm.
I mean, it's blows my mind. And I used to be an R&D guy innovating in companies, and it's hard to believe. Um,
Eddie, is that
so
the nature
Yeah,
of your comment?
yeah, I can absolutely vouch for what he's saying because our we just earlier this year hired our senior design engineer
No, you're
from
not in ortho. Give him your background.
so we're developing devices for urological control, fancy catheters. We went looking for a senior design engineer. Um, the headhunter firm that we work with brought us a guy from Depew Synthes. He'd been there for 13 years. He's fantastic, but he exactly was saying, look, he doesn't have any ability to do anything neat and
right.
innovative. And with us, he has a massive amount of responsibility. And then, literally 3 weeks after he joined us, they called the entire team of 27 people into the room and said there's 2 doors, half you go through one, half you go through the other, and the half that go through door B don't have jobs anymore.
Oh,
So
Well,
yeah.
yeah, the big companies. So the way I've explained it is the engineers or employees in the big orthopedic companies, their entrepreneurial spirit has been bred out of them. So they've been trained over and over again. Don't take risks. Don't take risks. Don't take risks. You'll get promoted. You'll get more responsibility. If the nail that sticks up gets hammered in the big companies. And I worked in startups and big companies, and it's the opposite in a small company. I mean, I was 18th employee, the 8th employee, and the second employee, and you literally get fired if you don't take a risk. I mean, I've had CEOs say, if you just bring me something run of the mill garden variety innovation, that's your last day. We want challenging ideas every day. We want to push the limits. if you're not pushing the limits, you're gone. It's the exact opposite. It's really interesting. So let me go through the other 8.
Your conversation,
So
it's not a webinar.
yeah. So orthopedics, the technology changes every 5 or 10 years in orthopedics. So back in the 70s, joints was everything, joints in the early 80s. And then spine was all the rage in the late 90s and early 2000s, as well as biologics. But those have run their course. Now there's no innovation in those areas. Joint, spine, biologics, there's not much innovation. And then robotics came with the advent of Mako, with Stryker buying Mako, and that's run its course. Everybody's got a robot, nobody cares. And now the hottest area is extremities. So extremities in orthopedics is it's shoulder down and foot and ankle is generally what is considered extremities. And it's the last area that hasn't been innovated in orthopedics. It's small bones. They call it small bones too. That's the hot area right now, but it's running its course. The extremity startups are getting the highest multiples. They're getting acquired quickly. That's kind of where we are. The next wave is imaging and navigation. So imaging and navigation is kind of nascent right now, and it's there'll be some really big acquisitions in the next 5 years in the imaging navigation space. And then AI. AI is we're probably 5 years out from early AI companies really making a dent. So anyway, that's the innovation sort of marches along in orthopedics by technology, and we're in the end of extremities. We're in the beginning of imaging, navigation, and AI. So that's number 2. Number 3 is software is becoming more important than hardware, and this is happening slowly. But I'm a mechanical engineer. Everything used to be mechanical with it's titanium and bone screws, everything, and now nobody cares about mechanical stuff. It's every product has a software component, and so companies are trying to figure that out. Another trend, number 4, is disposable is better than reusable. So because there's a huge trend towards ASC surgeries, surgeon-owned surgery centers, then they don't want to touch steam autoclave trays. It's a nightmare. Steam autoclave trays are a nightmare, and ASCs. They all want disposable kits that are pre-sterilized and specific. So that's a huge trend. Disposables are just showing up everywhere. Another number 5 is funding is completely dried up, except for early stage companies. So there's no money for Series B, Series C. There's no debt available. You can't go out and buy debt.
And what's the impact to your recruiting business?
I can talk about that.
No employees.
Well, companies are doing more with less, and so they've learned during COVID that you can do more with less people, and so the big public companies are they're more profitable than they've ever been with less people. They're doing layoffs every 3 months, and it doesn't seem to affect the business at all. And I think they're just gotten smart. The CRM tools are better. The surgical training is better. The R&D teams are better. I mean, everything's better with less people. Mm-hmm. Is kind of what's going on. And there's no money out there. I mean, it's really hard to get seed money is available, a little Series A, but after that, it's gone. Class 3 products are pretty much gone in orthopedics and spine. I was trying to build a chart the other day. There's maybe 2 PMA IDE clearances every year now, and it used to be 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. It's just the regulatory burden for class 3 has gotten so hard. and nobody has the investment fortitude to last. It takes 10 years and $100 million to bring a class 3 to market, and nobody has that investment, longevity. So class 3 is gone. And you guys know this better than anybody, but Europe, it used to be Europe first with all products, but now with MDR, Europe's impossible. So everything's coming back to the US first. So every time you see a first in man press release, it's always in the US. It's really interesting. Let's see, number 8 I wrote down was everybody's talking about AI, but AI is not as important as data set building. So people think you just write software and you've got an AI. No, you don't. You have to. AI relies on huge data sets. I mean, you need thousands of patients to feed an AI to make it useful, but everybody forgets that. And so what's happening is these companies are going to slowly learn that you need humans. Actually, you'll need 10 or 20 employees just tagging data and building data sets in order to have an effective AI. But nobody's doing that yet. It's really interesting. Here, and then the last thing is kind of what you were asking, Joe. So there's more churn of employees in orthopedics than there's ever been in history because of a lot of those reasons. The big companies are laying off. The small companies, there's been about 15 startups that have gone out of business this year in orthopedics and spine. Yeah, because they got in trouble. They did acquisitions 2 or 3 years ago that they can't afford now. They can't service the debt. They couldn't get profitable, and they never could get profitable. So they just fold up their tent, or it's become asset sale, like Surgalign. Surgalign is a spine company in California that raised $200 million. And they just got sold the entire company was sold for $5 million. Conformis is a personalized hip and knee company in Boston. They raised $400 million and they just got acquired for $16 million. I mean, this is what's going on. If you're not profitable, you're vulnerable to being taken over. So anyway, those are the 9 that I see.
There was a side conversation apparently made public for Ginger and Eugene with an assist from Sue. Any of you are welcome to come off mute and talk to the class. Passing notes around. Come on.
Okay. My question was, you'd said 100 million for class 3 orthopedic in 10 years, and I've been contacted and been talking with somebody with a class 2 extremity, and they're looking for seed funding, yada, 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 and NIH, et cetera. But that said, I don't know that they understand how long, and maybe most of the startups I work with, as you say, their business model is to get themselves sold within 3 to 5 years, get proof of concept and get in a little bit with an agency and sell themselves. So what if they went independent is kind of the time frame for a class 2, do you think?
Well, it depends on how complicated it is. I mean, if it's a startup, you should really be able to go from the starting line to commercial launch in 18 months. I mean, if you're a really true startup. I mean, I've done that. I've done it. I've done standstill to launch in 9 months. I've done a standstill to launch in 12 months. I mean, with no resources either. You just, my first startup was called Novoline, and we developed a better humeral nail that saves your rotator cuff if you have a fractured humerus. And we went from a blank sheet of paper to commercial launch in 12 months. And the way we did that was we said, okay, we're gonna redesign everything, prototype it, and do a cadaver lab every 6 weeks. And so we had surgeons committed to that And once you have that rhythm, and after about 5 or 6 cadaver labs, we sort of had frozen the design, or we were happy with the design. Then we froze the design, did all the testing, filed it with the FDA, and got clearance, I think, faster than 90 days. So you got to go fast.
I'm confused by this.
Yeah.
You said you had a commercializable, ready for sale product within a year?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
But
easy.
that was just a nail, though, versus being a whole.
It was a nail in an instrument system. Yeah, it was a whole tray. Yeah, it was a whole system. Yeah.
Now
screws. Yeah.
I want to ask especially because while he's not accepted my invitation to become a panelist, there's a young man on the call with whom I had a conversation this week who is not from industry at all. His last job was with Hilton Vacations, and
right.
he and Nicholas, I'm going to try to invite you again if you're willing to show your face. You don't have to, of course. And he wants to get into medical, and he was talking about, oh, he will join. Oh, that's good. He wants to bring a product to market, and I said, "Are you out of your mind?" And he's expecting a second child, and I'm like, "You have no credibility in the space because no one's ever heard of you. You've not done anything in this market, and talk about, one of the most difficult markets there is to bring a new medical device to market." And sure enough, come Friday, Tiger Buford says, "Oh yeah, it just took me a couple of months." And I'm like,
it's fast. You got to go fast.
Hey, Nicholas.
Thanks for having me.
Sure, I'm glad you're here. So, maybe someone, a smarter grown-up, is going to give you a different answer here, because I was like, go into
you can do it. You just need a co-founder that knows medical devices. I mean, Joe's right. It's a highly regulated market, and there's a lot of know-how. If you don't have the know-how, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to bleed money. So what's your idea, Nicholas?
Well, it's kind of a long shot, but I actually have a colleague of mine, or a friend that I made in the medical device space, specializing in pressure injuries. And so we were talking one day, and we're just kind of chit-chatting about some things that she's seen in the last decade in pressure injuries, and how the products have changed and the market has changed. And I wound up just becoming friends with her and learning that the medical the pressure care devices have really gone down in quality. There's a lot of advancements that aren't hitting the market, so we thought maybe we would put our minds together and think of a way to improve. Sorry, I'm a little bit intimidated. There's so many people on my screen right now,
and we're all judging you.
I was so happy, just listening to everybody, and of course, Joe will put me on the spot. I should have prepared a little bit better.
Oh, that's the point.
No, you're good. You're
friends. You're common.
Yeah.
So when you talk about pressure, are you talking about wounds, or are you talking about compartmental syndrome? What are you talking about?
Yeah, so basically bed sores. We're looking at products like alternating pressure mattresses. We're looking at DVT devices, so compression devices. We're looking at lymphedema, which I've been doing a lot of research. And, I was telling Joe the other day that I was looking at somebody smarter than I giving out a graph. And if you look at all the diseases in hospitals today, pretty much they're all coming down for the most part. If you're looking at strokes or cancer rates or all kinds of things like that, but pressure injuries seem to be increasing. And there's a big burden because of COVID, the lack of staffing and nursing. Pressure injuries, primarily you want to turn the patient, and you have to move the patient. So you need to staff to do that. And because of the burdensome effects of of COVID, you know, that's really lacking today.
Interesting. Yeah, that's definitely a need. There's more obese patients. There's more. Yeah, that's which is probably driving that. Doesn't Stryker have a bed that automatically turns if nobody's in there?
Yeah, there are some options out there, and so that's what we're looking at. You know, maybe enhancing some of these products, you know, we're still like thinking of design and different things that we can do, but yeah, I mean, I'm just here to learn from you guys, and man,
Right.
it's fascinating, you know, just listening to this, and so I really appreciate being here.
Well, you're
Well,
welcome.
yeah, thanks.
So my point of calling him out was, are you nuts? And steer clear. And you give an example of how you brought something to market in a year, but you had a lot of wind at your back. So how long were you in
Right.
engineering before that happened? Before you gained
Oh,
that insight?
yeah. Well, I had to go from I had to, 15 years, but I had to go from a big company to a small company to learn how you can do things faster. So it's uh yeah, it's when you're a small company, you have a lot of handicaps, right? You have no people, you have no money, you have no products on the market, you have no salespeople. I mean, you have all these zeros in your one column, but in the other column, you have some superpowers that the big companies don't have, and one of them is speed. You have the ability to go really fast. When my last startup in Ellipse Technologies, we had the most the magic rods, right? We had the most complicated implant in the world because it was we had a motor inside an implant basically, and we had remote controls outside the body that could change the implant, size, uh, software, electronics, just crazy stuff. We redesigned the implant every single week. I mean, it was insane. Every Friday, we would redesign it was like building a watch inside of a nail. And we'd redesign 2 or 3 parts inside the watch and tested it every week. So we had 50 iterations a year. And man, did we go fast. Speed and iteration is your friend when you're a small company. Another example is Treese Medical. Treese Medical's down in Florida. They're the #1 bunion company in the world, and they've gone from zero to $1 billion company in 5 years. And the way they did it was speed and innovation and iteration. They've got 300 employees now, and they literally do 2 R&D labs every week to try to improve their product. So they're doing 100 R&D labs a year, and that's their secret sauce. I mean, if you're a small company, I mean, it's noon on the East Coast and it's 9 on the West Coast. What can you do to prototype the thing this afternoon? I mean, don't wait a week. Don't ask for permission. Put something in your hand this afternoon. I mean, if you're trying to roll a patient over in a bed, do something this afternoon. I mean, that's the secret sauce when you're a startup.
So, Tiger, if I may, are you guys executing Agile? Is that how you're doing your iterations, like 2-week sprints and that kind of thing?
Are we executing what? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Agile.
Agile. No, I'm not sure. What is Agile?
Oh, well, you're not executing it. All right, that's all I've got.
Yeah,
all right. Generally, I just finished a gig over at Johnson & Johnson. And I've done a lot of.
This would be good context. I'm sorry to interrupt, but he doesn't know what any of you do. So what do you do, Eugene?
I'm an agile product delivery manager. I help people understand how to use something specifically called scaled agile. It's a form of agile that, in my opinion, is the best way to execute. And when I hear people say innovation, and iteration is what I believe you said as well. I'm like, oh wow, so they're executing agile, because at Johnson and Johnson they say that they are, and they use terms like release train engineer, they use terms like scrum master and sprints, but the way they're still doing things in what we call the waterfall methodology. It's a very drawn out, design everything 2 years ahead of time, test it another year and a half later, and by the time you actually have a product, someone's beaten you to the race already. So when I was listening to you just now, there's actually a number of things that you said. I'm going to get everyone angry, but you're my favorite speaker so far on Joe's podcast here.
How infuriating!
Aside from Joe, of course, Joe's got this great HAL 2000 voice that I really enjoy.
Really?
Yeah, you do actually. So I was just curious, what form of agile you're using, if you're using agile. Maybe you're using it, you're just not familiar with the term. So that was my question. That's it.
Interesting.
But Johnson and Johnson, I think they're really kind of shooting themselves in the foot a lot of the time, because the innovation comes from the developers. The developers who are close to the work being done, they're the ones who come back and say, hey, there's a better way of doing this. And if you don't allow them to have that input, it's just going to make a less desirable product.
Yep. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so J&J announced this week, actually, that they're going to reorganize their orthopedic division, which is, it's a $10 billion company. It's called DePuy Synthes, and they're just going to rip it to pieces, and because they're not growing fast enough.
Yeah, like I said in that little thing that I texted in, it just seems like the Q&A folks just say everything has to go just this way, just this way, just this way.
Right.
And you can't bring in, you're kind of fencing off the ability to innovate. But I don't know.
Yeah,
they've been in business 150 years. Who am I to tell them how to do things?
Yeah, but they're not innovating anymore. All they're doing, they're buying startups. That's the R&D strategy. Is once they see real innovation in the field, and the startup has regulatory clearances, and they're actually selling something, and they're showing they can adopt new surgeons, then they say, well, that one works. It's like going to the horse race and you see who the winning horse is, and then you just buy the horse.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing. They're not allowed to internally innovate. They pretend like they do, but they don't. I mean,
yeah, true. That was my experience over at J&J.
One of the reasons I wanted to have Tiger be, I can't do this now. Tiger be my guest today is in the spirit of what he's building at Bone Chat, which is not terribly dissimilar from what we have at Premium. And I encouraged him, as you know, to have a call like ours. And he was concerned, well, what are we all going to talk about? Because we all have a similar background. And what I'd like to offer him is you folks for a start. For example, right now you have about 30 people. You just started it, and they're largely startup folks. Greg, I think you'd be an excellent presenter for them to learn about the basics of IT. Sue, how you brought your product to market. There are parallels there that they could learn from. So, anyone on the call, if you want to just take yourself off mute and tell Tiger a little bit about what you do, perhaps you'd like to make yourself available for an hour in much this manner to a bunch of people who've likely never heard of Agile, or they don't know what they don't know. So you could be a real eye-opener for them. So does anyone, I'm happy to talk marketing with them. Anyone here have a suggestion, either of themselves, or if someone's not on today's call? I know Nick would do it for reimbursement. I know, Michelle will come on for for regulatory, ginger perhaps for So I'll stop there. Anyone want to throw their hat in the ring or make a suggestion for him?
We can do it later. That's fine.
You let them off the hook too easily.
I can talk. I can always talk.
Excellent.
So we're bringing a product to market. We're about a month away from FDA submission on our first two devices. Basically, I'm a pharmacist by trade, and I saw a problem with filtering of glass ampules, which they use a lot in orthopedics. And I think I sent a link to a really interesting article where you can see a picture of glass in a knee.
Was that a link from his site?
No, it was a link from my site. I mean, not from my site, but I have all these articles. But one was orthopedic journal, and I get the journal every month for some reason. Interesting about all the devices. So I have an all-in-one package, one needle filter device, so you don't have to switch needles, and reduces needle stick injuries and ensure that no glass shards enter the patient. So our first and second launch is going to be, once we get FDA approved, we're going to launch with both an 18 gauge and a 25 gauge, one for direct patient injection. But in Europe, they're using more blunt needles. So my strategic partner is interested in getting the blunt needles to Europe. So I have an NSF grant that I just received for a blunt needle. So we have a 1-year project to change the anything that we have to do with the mold and incorporate this new blunt needle product. So I need Agile, and I need to do this in a year so I don't have to file for an extension, and we can get to Europe on the EU mark and be like Ed and struggle. It's just that's my goal.
Cool. Yeah, just break it into tiny steps. You got to eat the elephant, So you got to figure out, what are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do Sunday? What are you going to do Monday? And it's amazing how much progress you could make by breaking into tiny little steps.
I put it on my calendar of lists of things I do, and I break it into like a week. Things that I need to accomplish each day, and that's helpful.
Yeah.
And the blunt needle, actually, we're using another company who seems to be more involved and wanting to get this done in a year. So that's a good thing.
Excellent.
Tiger, let's spend some time. I don't know what your day looks like today. So we can do a Zoom and look over some lessons learned I have from Premium and how we can apply them to your situation.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. I've got a call at, let me look at it.
Well, you're on Premium now as my guest, so just send me a message there so we don't take everyone's time.
Got it. Okay.
I want to. Oh, Yuha, did you mean to put your hand up?
Yes, hello. Thank you very much for the interesting talk. I'm Juha Hämäläinen from Finland and working in a company, Thermidas, as a quality manager. My goal is to shorten the time to market, which is, at least I'm not trying to block the innovation. But you mentioned as one of your trends the extremities and imaging, and we work in an infrared camera business, and one of our target areas are diabetic foot ulcers and other extremity problems. So could you somehow tell something more about the trend of imaging and extremities, please?
Oh, wow. That's bringing two of the trends together. So, well, first of all, in the US, diabetic foot ulcers is just it's a nightmare now. It's increasing dramatically as patients are obese and they have terrible diets. I mean, you go to the VA hospitals and you see diabetic foot ulcers all over the place. And I've been in those hospitals. If people's feet are rotting off and they can't even feel them. It's an incredible problem. So I that's a great space. So is your imaging, what does your imaging detect? What are you trying to solve?
Well, we detect the temperature differences between the feet. For example, in diabetic foot ulcers, if the temperature difference is about 2.2 degrees Celsius, then there's a danger of a new ulcer. And essentially,
so you're trying to catch,
we measure temperature with a camera.
Got it. So, and you're doing that, you're trying to detect diabetes early. So, and what is the size? Is the device in the hospital setting, or can it be used at home? Or?
Well, the latest version is a tablet-sized.
Oh, got it. Cool. Excellent.
System. And then we have a mobile system, which is on a cart.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's a hot space. I would, in the U.S., I would definitely, is it cleared in the U.S. or in Europe yet?
We have both CE mark and then 510K clearance from the USA. So.
Oh, wow. So I would definitely target
class one device with the software, so it had to go through 510K.
Oh, I love it. Perfect. I would definitely target the VAs in the US. Do you have a salesperson in the US?
We have a subsidiary. One of our owners lives in the US, so he runs the office in Florida.
Okay, yeah, just go. I mean, just put a list together of all the VAs in the US, and that's going to be your primary customer, I think. I love it. I love that device. And how do you get paid? Is it a SaaS model where you get paid a subscription, or do you sell the device?
We could do both. The mobile system, which is a stationary, would probably be sold as a unit, but then the tablet system allows a software as a service model with for example, the patients, we could go to homes and patients would do the measurements themselves, and then images are sent to cloud, and then some kind of alert would be generated for the healthcare professionals that there's problem with this patient, and should you call them or what? So both models are available there.
Got it. So you definitely have a product that's useful, obviously, and it solves a problem, and you can be paid for it. So I would put your biggest challenge is, and this is where Joe and other people can help, is marketing. So how does a customer find out about the imaging product? You know, if you're in Phoenix and you've got too many diabetic, you have late stage diabetic feet coming into your hospital, and you go, oh, we're going to have to amputate. This is terrible. Why couldn't we detect this earlier? How does that customer find out about that? It's a marketing challenge, I think.
That's a good point. We are still working on how to organize the sales in globally. So
yeah, that's a trend that a lot of startups do. They have smart people and they develop a great product that's actually useful and people will pay for it, but they never connect the dots on how do we acquire customers. Sales and marketing is usually an afterthought, and can be the hardest part of the business.
Thank you for that, Juha. And thank you, Tiger, for being our guest today and getting to know some of my friends. This is on the lower end of the attendance, not because you're not a fantastic and extraordinary individual, but I suspect because a number of people said, I don't do ortho. That's not relevant for me.
It's a subset.
I don't think it works in reverse for yours, where a lot of my friends have functional expertise and they're all in ortho. Just for that in consideration, I'll look for your message. Just while we were on the call, I got a lead for Andre, and I messaged him on Premium, and he said, sure, go ahead. And I've already sent her the information. So that's really the power of the network, and I'm glad to include you as part of it. Well, thank you, everyone. Nicholas, welcome. And
Thanks
we'll
for
see
having
you
me.
next week.
Thanks.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
thanks
everybody.
for having me.
Have a great weekend.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Joe.